Good morning and welcome to the weekly reminders. My name is Lauren Hall and I am program coordinator at Remind. This is a hot Thursday. I hope you guys are staying hydrated and safe. Thank you again for joining with me today on today's topic of understanding empathy. On January 20th, 2008, our then U.S. President Barack Obama stated to a congregation, "The biggest deficit that we have in our society and in the world right now is an empathy deficit. We are in great need of people being able to stand in somebody else's shoes and see the world through their eyes." In a time of information overload, every conflict and disaster is relayed to us as it happens. And sometimes that can result in emotional numbness or emotional detachment. Is it possible for us to run out of empathy? Life is so loud and distracting, it becomes harder to sense what is going on around us. The less we are aware in the moment, the harder it is to be in tune to others' feelings and intentions. We should know that we do not have to have the same experience or experience certain things firsthand to be kind and listen to others. You may not know exactly what someone is feeling, but you can understand that some experiences are more difficult than others. Sharing is hard, and when we open ourselves up to others, we do so intending to be comforted and understood, not to be judged, treated differently, or shamed. The truth is that we never understand another person until we listen to them and immerse ourselves deeply into their situation or experiences. And that's the only beginning of understanding. And the beginning of understanding is empathy. So what is empathy? Empathy is our ability to tune in, to recognize, and understand others. Empathy is necessary for connection and understanding intention and recognizing emotions. When we feel grounded as ourselves, it's easier to be empathetic without getting overwhelmed. It involves experiencing another person's point of view rather than just our own, and enables pro-social and helping behaviors that come from within rather than be forced. So you may say, well, why is empathy important? Empathy is the foundation of shared humanity. That's how we relate to each other. Empathy connects us. In our lives, empathy bridges our differences. Empathy, however, does not mean approval or agreement. We can empathize with others without conceding our rights and needs. In fact, empathy is at its best when we are in conflict because it helps us to be more effective in our discussions and understand those we may disagree with. To develop empathy, humans begin to show signs of empathy in infancy, and the trait develops steadily through our childhood and adolescence. Still, most of us feel a great sense of empathy, and sometimes we feel less empathy for those who are outside our family, our community, our race. Developing empathy is crucial for establishing relationships and behaving compassionately. Empathy helps us to cooperate with others, build friendships, make moral decisions, and intervene when we see others being bullied. So you may say there's empathy and there's sympathy. What's the difference? Well, there's a big difference. And sometimes empathy and sympathy are used interchangeably, but they're not the same. Sympathy is feeling concern for someone else, a desire that they become happier and better off, whereas empathy involves sharing the other person's emotions. Compassion is an empathetic understanding of a person's feelings, accompanied by the desire to act on that person's behalf. So when you think about it, empathy is that channel that connects us to one another. And compassion is what flows through that channel. All right? And when we talk about developing empathy, there are always some barriers to empathy, to developing empathy. And when you think about society and media, we see so many different things constantly. Negative news, conflict, disasters, right? Violence is constant, and we can become so immune to it that emotionally we some kind of way disconnect. And there are barriers to that. And some of those barriers is cognitive biases. So what does that mean? It's a big word, right? Sometimes the way people perceive the world around them is influenced by a lot of different biases. So for example, it's almost like a bandwagon effect. This is the tendency where people do or think a certain way because other people choose to do and think a certain way. These biases can make it difficult to see all the factors that contribute to a situation and make it less likely that we will be able to see a situation from the perspective of another. Another barrier is dehumanization. Many of us fall into that victim trap of thinking that people are different from us, also believe that we don't feel like we know and understand them. So for example, when we watch reports of a disaster or conflict in a foreign land, we might feel less empathetic because we're not connected to them, right? We're not connected to their suffering, right? So that may be a sense of a barrier. Another barrier is victim blaming. Sometimes when another person has suffered a terrible experience, we make the mistake of blaming the victim for their circumstances. This is the reason why victims of crime are often asked what they might have done differently to prevent the crime. This tendency stems from the need to believe that the world is fair and just. People want to believe that people get what they deserve and deserve what they get. It fools them into thinking that such terrible things could never happen to them. So being conscious of those barriers is very important. So how do I practice empathy? Well, I'll tell you. Fortunately, empathy is a skill that you can learn and strengthen. If you would like to build empathy skills, there are a few things you can do. Work on listening to people without interrupting. Pay attention to body language and other types of nonverbal communication. Try to understand people even when you don't agree with them. Ask people questions to learn more about them and their lives and their experience. And then last but not least, imagine yourself in another person's shoes. We live in this life where we're all experiencing so many things. And the worst thing and detrimental thing we can do is not put ourselves or see ourselves in other people's experiences. So just to recap, empathy is our ability to tune in and recognize and understand others. Recognize and identify any barriers that come in the way of us being empathetic. So, knowing that the news, seeing news and seeing constant disaster, constant violence can sometimes lead to emotional numbness and emotional detachment. So being aware of how that impacts the way you express emotions and that you relate to people's experiences. So learning those barriers of cognitive biases, really acknowledging what my bias is, victim blaming and dehumanizing a person's experience. Learn to strengthen your empathy by listening without judgment, being kind even when you don't understand, and allow others to feel in their experiences. And remember, empathy does not mean approval or agreement, but rather it gives us more of an effective way to have the discussions to gain understanding of other people's experiences. Oh man, it's great to talk to you guys again today. Thank you for tuning in. Please stay safe and connected. Please join me next Thursday for our discussion on embracing positive thinking. Also, please make sure you sign up for our online support groups. They are great and beneficial, especially just to have a supportive network as we go through different challenges and feel a sense of relatability with one another during this time. Please check out our website at remindsupport.org for resources and also information about our online support groups. Thank you so much. Stay hydrated and stay safe in this summer heat. Have a wonderful day. Bye.